Is it well? It's yeah, Ella, your Mac is wrong. It's just turned 1900. I got the tech working. I trialed it, tested it. Oh my goodness and golly and gosh, how is everyone? Are you all well? How's everyone's Wednesday going? Mine's been dreadful, because of Canada. Uh, Canada, I'm shaking my fist. Right, so everyone can hear me. Good, excellent. Uh, oh, here we go. There we are. I needed that. Oh, marvelous. So hopefully everyone's well on your. There we go. So yeah, that's it. We are. Shall I? Wait a minute. Let me do this. Let me get up. Let's get this big. Hello, everyone. Hello. I have a humorously heady beer here, which is nice. 'Cause it smells nice. You can all hear me. Good. Some people have had good Wednesdays. I'm glad. I'm glad. You can't see me. Well, you can now. It's gonna be yeah, it's gonna be an interesting one. So yeah, I mean, I'm delaying already, but that's because I'm just actually taking a moment to just soak in everyone being here, and everything's okay. There we go. So, you can't see me, can you? Can you not? Is Big Face not engaged properly? I'm pretty sure it's here. Can people hear me? See me? Confirm that you can hear me and see me, and then I'm happy. Oh no, you can't see me. What? That cannot be right. No, it must be. Reload the page. I am here. Yeah, do some F5s on your page. I am here. You just can't see me. Right. Without further ado, let's crack on. We're gonna go straight to the news. What has been in the news this week? It's gonna be an interesting episode, but we're gonna start with the news. So, that's right. It's the budget, or rather, the national spending review. Out of which has been spat this thing, the National Infrastructure Strategy, which I've not really looked at yet, other than some vague chatterings on Twitter. Nigel Harris, one of my various bosses, wasn't particularly impressed by it. I have to say, from some of the rhetoric I've seen, I'm not very impressed with it. You get down to like what is it, page 41, and almost immediately you reach this. Yeah, that's right. It was beaching. Not great. Anyway, next the news thing, because I'm sure we'll unpick that in a future episode. I think we're all fully booked now until January, so perhaps we'll go through the National Infrastructure Strategy, which is not a strategy as far as I can tell, for having seen the chat. But anyway, we'll get there. In any case, the next item of the news, TransPennine Express, they did a whoopsie and they managed to break a record. Hooray! What happened? Well, we have no idea, and there'll be a proper report into this because actually it's quite a dangerous. Okay, rail industry. Whoever's on there, David Shearers is with us. So David Shearers is has the capacity to hunt out things. In any case, the rail industry needs to publish a report on this because it's a pretty scary incident. A TransPennine Class 802 managed to reach 148 miles an hour between Nethallerton and Thirsk. In service, not full of passengers, let's face it, like mostly not full of passengers, but probably with, there were passengers in it. It was an in-service train, which means that it's broken the record for the fastest timetabled in-service passenger train off High Speed 1 in the UK, which is quite something. Yes, not ideal. But they have got, that does mean that TransPennine have got that record. I've got a sneaking suspicion that they won't advertise that particularly loudly. In any case, there's a discussion, and it's on either side there's a bit of a discussion on either side about whether it was a driver error or whether it was a problem with the system limiter, which is why there needs to be a proper report, because the people who have told me which one it probably is are people who have a vested interest in it being the one that they said it is. So I have to say to those who've said that, I don't believe you. I'm not believing it until I see it in a report, sorry. In any case, there we go. Whoopsie doopsie. What's next? Yes. Cam. Lovely Cam. What's gone wrong? Well, everything's going wrong with Cam. Because currently it is there's problems with its finances already. The boss that they were expecting to take over hasn't taken over it. Oh crikey, no. What are people saying? Ella, that's on high speed 1 though. They can only do 186 miles an hour when they're on high speed 1. So my point is, it's off high speed 1. Yeah. In the UK, off HS1. Yeah, Michael C's got me. Yeah. That's it. Everyone's getting the record right. So. Cam is in trouble already. If you don't know what that is, 1 minute. Let's go back to Big Face momentarily. Big Face is here. Nigel was in fact, I was asked to write about it by my esteemed sub editor. Where is it? Oh, there he is. Oh no, that's not it. Is it this? Oh, it's over here. I'll be back in a moment. Oh crikey, Mikey. There we go. Wrong issue of Rail. There we are. I'm at the back, I think, because people they put me in as a columnist so that I don't get told off too much. I've shown you this already. I'm in here. Anyway, go and have a read. It's I think it's still on shelves. If not, I'll pop it on to Medium in a short while. In any case, that. So, the news. That was the news. What else have we got? Let's see. Oh, there's some chatter happening already. So I'm going to try this one's going to hopefully be a bit more chat engagey as it has been in the past. How big is the Cambridge urban area? Oh gosh. In terms of total population, it's about 50th in the UK. Someone else was pointing out that it's about 27th in terms of employment potential, but it's still not. Yeah, it's like, from my perspective, I'm not so interested in employment. I'm interested in just people, because people who aren't employed also have a right to have access to public transport. In any case, what are the other questions we've had? Matt Reed is asking, with the Cambridge Autonomous Metro, will they bin off the guided busway? Yep, the guided busway gets kiboshed. Weirdly, they'll be kiboshing a guided busway with a non-guided busway, which is also just known as a bus. Very, very strange. Give TP the 373, says Eurostar Lover 009. Well, indeed. David Shepherd asks, could beaching lines be reopened as shuttle services to third platforms next to main lines to avoid capacity impacts? The trouble is, that won't solve the capacity problem. It'll make it worse still, because you'll be stopping existing trains to interface with those platforms. So no, see the previous rail natter on beaching. In any case, let us press on. So if I return, there's Cam, the lovely Cam logo. Let's crack on with the episode, shall we? Welcome to tonight's Rail Natter. The lovely Intercity 225 fading away into the distance. We're going to start with, we're first of all going to start by bringing up my tiny face. Hello, my tiny face is here. I'm very purple because there's a very purple screen in front of me. We're going to start with talking about gadget bans. What is a gadget ban? Well, for those of you who've watched one of my previous videos, then you should all know, or indeed spend any time on my Twitter feed. I'm sure you all know what a gadget ban is. But for those of you who don't do either of those things, congratulations. It's a good idea for all sorts of reasons. But a gadget ban is defined as, well, this is sort of a bit of a hybrid definition. I've pulled, there's a definition on Wiktionary, but also I've sort of slightly embellished it. In public transport, transportation concepts, often speculative, which seem to be infeasible or unnecessary. That's the definition of gadget ban. In public transport, transportation concepts, often speculative, which seem to be infeasible or unnecessary. Wiktionary points out that it's slang, it's a transport term, and it's derogatory, all of which are true. So that's what a gadget ban is, and that's essentially what the theme of tonight's Rail Natter is going to be. And I'm going to be explaining why it's important to point out gadget bans, to shout about them, and generally annoy people about them, and ideally do so in such a way that your elected members, councillors, or whoever it happens to be, notice and decide not to do it. So, that's a gadget ban. The next thing is, basically, okay, there's like a tilde definition, which is, does it have pods? If it has pods, chances are it's a gadget ban. So this gadget ban definition, well, I first came upon it in a video by Do Not Eat, and Yeah, so I was like, oh, that's quite a good description. And then originally it was Anton Dubraw's Cat Bus blog, where he goes through and defines gadgetbahn really quite neatly. And I'd recommend going and finding that. You can find it really easily. Just search Cat Bus gadgetbahn, and it's like the first hit. So I'd strongly recommend going and having a read of that, because it's useful to just understand what it is, why it's why we need to give a name, give a label to things. Well, it's kind of the opposite of why for me it's important to not call things that are basically to not misname things metros. It's the same sort of thing. There's an important political decision and choice underlying it, and it's so calling it for what it is very important. Oh, yeah. So this is the video where I kind of explain and describe what a gadgetbahn is in this video. So I'm not going to go into great pictorial detail about it. But this episode where I talk about maglev, which is in and of itself a gadgetbahn, this episode of my gadgetbahn series, I go into that. So yeah, go and have a look. So, okay, so I very, very briefly talked about what a gadgetbahn is, but how do these things that are, if it's a gadgetbahn, presumably, and a derogatory term, presumably it's a bit rubbish, and there are clearly better options. So how on earth do these things pick up traction? How do people start actually, how do these ideas find their way into the public realm? How do people justify coming, how do they get beyond the sort of the sketchboard? Well, I'm going to go through 5 different kind of ploys that are pulled by progenitors of these ideas, in order that you can hopefully spot them and undermine them, unpick them, and get past them, so that we can call them out and essentially, we'll at the end we'll discuss why it's important to point them out. So the first of these, right. So while I keep that up, I will answer a couple of questions. Matt Reed is asking: is the Cambridge Autonomous Metro a gadgetbahn? Absolutely, it is. Yeah. Ella Developer Series, he says, don't you mean single video with potential? Yes, it is. Well, I'm getting there. Edited videos take a huge amount of time, which is something that I've not had this year. So, but I'm going to tease the next one later on, and I do have some short ones that I'm going to record as well. We'll get there. Let's go in with the next one. I just spotted in the chat that someone said Elon's joined the chat, possibly. In any case, the number one ploy. It's the future ploy, and we're gonna go through each of these ploys, and for each ploy, I'm gonna refer to either a gadgetbahn or a sort of an associated concept. So in this case, Hyperloop is what I'm gonna pick on. So it's the future ploy. This is the key thing. So
imagine traveling non-stop at up to 600
you can hear this silly video. Hopefully, I'm talking over it nice and loudly. Look at this snazzy, silly video.
A new mode of transportation.
It's a new mode of transportation. It isn't. It's not new. So look at these. This all looks very snazzy, doesn't it? It's like, ooh, look at this. It's very snazzy. But actually, what they're describing in this video is a technology that is the best part of 50 years old. That thing that they've just unpicked, which is a desk fan, weirdly, was invented by, or was certainly sort of developed into a kind of a formal system by Eric Laithwaite, who's a Lancastrian, who's probably about as far from Elon Musk as you can possibly imagine. But this is all just old. This is old news, and yet it's in a very glossy, shiny video. Now the reason why, wait a minute, they're still going. Oh, goodness. They are. Again, like, anyone who's sensible looking at this video goes, that's bonkers. Wow, that's going to be energy efficient. Not. Anyway, there it is. Maglev, but with vacuum cleaners. Very good. Anyway, right, let's skip this horrible video. Because actually, the reality is that this is what Hyperloop looks like. It's a big pipe on a concrete plinth. And there's one 500-meter scaled down test track, and then in the Nevada desert, and then there's this one. I don't know where this one is. I think it might be in France, which is Hyperloop Transportation Technologies one. Which again, it's just a pipe. We've been building pipes for a very long time. It's not that exciting. Again, yeah, you just look at this, and I'm just thinking. Bearing in mind the whole system is predicated on the idea of being like it can't be tunneled. The system, it doesn't allow tunneling. The whole business model collapses, so it has to be on the surface. Which for me then begs the question, where the heck are they putting this, given that it has to be in a straight line? Because nowhere in Europe is going to be able to suit this tech. Anyway, so that's kind of by the by. The ploy we're talking about is that it's the future ploy. Now, the point of this is you'll often hear people they'll go, yeah, but the railways were the future ones and people fought against them. It's an absolutely classic ploy that tries to suggest that people opposing this junk are Luddites, when the reality is that history does not actually repeat itself. History is... it's a very easy, lazy thing to say about history, but it doesn't repeat itself because history is complicated, a tangled web of different variables, and every different circumstance is different. They're echoes, perhaps, but actually nothing repeats itself. So there are good, solid reasons why rail is still going. I mean, I often say 200 years after it was developed, but actually rails, railway track, railway infrastructure that you or I would recognise has existed for more than 300 years, actually. It's an incredibly old system of technology, kind of like, I don't know, the water pipe. The reason that the railways have lasted as long as they have is because it's technology that works very, very well, very efficiently. And the reason that other things haven't succeeded is because they don't work quite as well. And this is another typical example. So so it's important to fight it's the future. It's like saying warp drive and we should pause all other transport development and investment because at some point in the future there might be Star Trek transporters or warp drive. Like, okay, well, fine, you keep doing that, but tell you what, in the meantime, let's use the solutions we have. So, Hyperloop. I'm not going to talk about why it's completely rubbish, because the next, as Ella was hinting at me, the next statement, the next video, rather, in my gadgetbahn series, to make it into a series of 2, is going to be about Hyperloop, which is, why Hyperloop is exactly as daft as it sounds. So I'm not going to go into all the reasons why Hyperloop is complete rubbish, but it is. But suffice to say, it's a common riposte of all of its progenitors that rail was the future once. So just ignore those people, basically. I'm going to put the Hyperloop picture back up, actually. So there are some questions. I'm going to do my very, very best to pick up these questions. So there are always queer, and I'll get to this. It's important. Part of this episode is going to be about ways to argue against this stuff and ways not to argue against this stuff. Because lots of arguments I see against Hyperloop are very much the wrong arguments to be made, and I think it's important that people who are fighting against this junk do so with the right approach and not trying to battle these tech loonies at their own game. Chris McKenna asks, what happens when a lorry drives into the pipe? To be fair, the same thing that happens when a lorry drives across a level crossing. You design the system to avoid that happening. So that's not necessarily too much of an issue. David Shepard, why can't they put Hyperpoop in the ground? Is it because TBM segments are not airtight? No, not necessarily. You can develop airtight tunnels underground. I'm sure you can. It's just that from a cost perspective, it costs more. And they've only developed their silly business, basically complete. They're trying to suggest the Bebop Gresta, whatever his name is. That's probably quite rude, actually. It's not his fault that he's got unless he chose that name and he's got a normal name. But Bebop, I think, is the name of the guy who's the face of Hyperloop Transportation Technologies. I was in a session with him in Milton Keynes, and he is a dismal human being, it has to be said. However, he constantly was harping on about the fact that railways don't pay for themselves and they have to be subsidised, and Hyperloop will pay for itself. And then he had to stress that it only pays for itself when you put it on stilts like this. So it's not that it doesn't work, it's just that their business, bearing in mind they're trying to make out as if it's some magical, self-contained, perfect financial sort of, I'm thinking of rude words I could say for it, circle something or other. It's trying to suggest that, which is why it's got to pay for itself. So that's why they come up with nonsense like it only works on stilts. So it's not that the engineering is a problem. It's just their silly business model stops it being a thing. So they're not developing. No one is currently developing Hyperloop as a tunneled solution. They're all developing it as on stilts, which should say a lot about it. Some people talking about whether it can go around curves. It probably will be able to go around curves without too much of a problem. It's just that they'll be very, very, very shallow. So to the onlooker, and indeed to all the infrastructure that it would result in being kiboshed, you need lots of them. It would look like a straight line, sorry. And also the other fact is that you need lots of them for it to even approach the capacity of current rail systems. So, yes, we'll get to that. And as I say, there are loads of threads I've done on why Hyperloop's bad. So I'm not going to get into the details of that now because, we're 20 minutes in. So, what else have we got? People also oppose Brunel gauge, and who's laughing now? Nice one, Simons. Yep, I think I follow your logic there. Matt Reed asks, do I have any thoughts on what will replace rail? Nope, none at all. I have no idea what will replace rail. Probably nothing for a very long time, because rail is unbeatably energy efficient. It's been around for, as I say, like the concept has been around since Greek times. Railways, plateways, as we'd recognise them, have been around for at least 300 years, and some, arguably you could say 4 or even 500 years. So it's a bit like asking what will replace roads. Next question. Here we go. Crikey, the ats are appearing. If you want me to answer a question, by the way, at me in the chat, because it appears in red and it's really easy for me to spot. Kentish Railways asks, what happens if you get a bridge strike equivalent on a Hyperloop tube? Again, similar thing as if you get a bridge strike on a high-speed railway. You know it's bad, but you design it out. Those aren't reasons for it to be a problem. Well, I'll get to that shortly. Anyway, right, let's crack on. So that was ploy number 1. Oh yeah, there they are. So that's the next episode. I'm doing a very bad job of audio describing this, but I'm sure it'll be fine. So number 2 is the bait and switch ploy, which is a really critical one, and it's very, very common. Josh Likes Cola says maglev will probably replace rail once infrastructure becomes cheap to build. No, that's not true, Josh. Maglev is a gadget ban. It is only applicable either for very low speed, like personal rapid transit gimmicks, or where you've built an exhaustive high-speed rail system. Sorry to everyone who's watching this video who thinks maglev's a good idea. Go watch my video on it. It's not. So, the bait and switch ploy, featuring the Cambridge Autonomous Metro. I've put lots of asterisks in there because the Cambridgeshire Autonomous Metro, as someone pointed out, its entire name is wrong. I didn't put this in my rail piece, so that was a mistake. But actually, it's not entirely in Cambridgeshire, so the Cambridgeshire bit's wrong. It isn't autonomous at all, so that bit's wrong. And it's definitely not a metro, so that bit's wrong. So its entire name is nonsense. Anyway, that's sort of by the by. We're going to use Cam as as my explainer for the bait and switch ploy, which is going to involve us watching a little video. So let's watch this video.
Cambridge is a world-famous city for lots of good reasons, one of which being we've got world-class economy here, but we don't have world-class infrastructure to match the needs of that economy.
Cambridge is a great city, but it really does struggle with getting people to move around. And we need to find ways of getting people out of their cars into public transport, but the transport has to be better than the car. For the club, we want to make ourselves as accessible to the whole of Cambridgeshire. Finding a public transport solution to that is really important.
Recent research has showed us that Cambridge's growth is constrained by a lack of world-class infrastructure, and game-changing infrastructure like a metro would enable growth across a wider region.
So I'm just going to pause it there. Has anyone noticed any mention of, has anyone noticed anything that suggests what type of system this should be yet? Or have you noticed that they're just talking about reasons why Cambridge is struggling, and the fact they've got? Let's keep going.
CAM is needed in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough because there's been a lack of investment into the road network, a lack of investment into the rail network. The buses are held up because of the congestion. We need to do something radical in Cambridgeshire. The answer isn't just to build more and more roads. The answer is to build world-class public transport.
Yeah, see what I'm talking about here? That's even Jimmy P there. At what point did he describe anything that requires some bonkers bespoke solution? Let's keep going. Don't worry, there's not long left.
CAM is a public transport solution for Cambridgeshire. It's our opportunity to prove that you can have world-class public transport in a county the size of Cambridgeshire and in a town like Cambridge, and I think it will be transformational for the county.
Interesting.
As a club, we engage a lot in the community, but the stadium we've got, built in the 1930s, wasn't designed with that in mind. A new stadium designed for the 21st century with good transport links is key, we think, to the future of the club.
The CAM will have a pivotal role in promoting sustainable economic growth and improving quality of life, not only within Cambridge, but across a wider region.
I believe that CAM will be transformational. I believe that people will find it so easy to use CAM that they will use it as a preference to the car. It is our desire that people will leave their cars at home and use the CAM, which will be autonomous, it will run late night, it will run...
I hadn't watched that bit of the video. I didn't know he said it was autonomous. I didn't know he said it was autonomous. Oh. Oh, that's good. That's very good. Also, don't laugh at the shoebox, given their discussions about railway stations recently. Oh my goodness. Oh, let's see what else he has to say.
Early, and they will use it not just for work but for leisure too. I'd be delighted if local people were to take part in the consultation. It's very important to us to hear their views. So if you want to have your say, if you want CAM, if you want world-class public transport, come on, join us and take part in this consultation.
Oh my goodness me. So, did anyone watching that video see any reason, any justification within that to indeed select what type of system it's running? Or did you just see a load of descriptions of problems that every town or city has without dedicated mass transit? Because this is precisely what every single gadgetbahn progenitor does. In this case, it's particularly heinous because you have a video and indeed a consultation where the decision as to what type of system it's going to be has already been made. And so they've just gone, would you like public transport? And then asked the city that. And of course the city then goes, yeah. They have no choice as to what the system is going to be. They're just being presented with, there's going to be public transport. Which means then that you saw that within that video, and it did tickle me, I'm afraid, that he mentioned that it was autonomous. Firstly, it isn't. It explicitly says in the report that defines this system that it is not autonomous. It says it in clear writing, as I put in my article. It is not autonomous. And then he also implies that somehow that's going to make a difference to people's desire to ride it. Now, don't get me wrong. The Docklands Light Railway not having a driver at the front, meaning that you can sit at the front and watch the train go along, is brilliant. But you can also do that on the Tyne and Wear Metro, and there's a driver next to you in that one. So it's not necessary to have the the front window experience. So why does he mention autonomous as if it's oh yeah, that's right, because it's entirely a vanity project about him, isn't it? Yeah, that's it. And it's so often that these sorts of, if you spot a gadgetbahn, the chances are there will be a vain politician connected with it who has been bought hook, line and sinker, or indeed has asked a consultancy to come up with something radical and basically has scored the consultancy who come up with the proposal based on how wacky the crazy ideas they come up with, irrelevant of the value of the need indeed for the city to have proper public transport. All the stuff there's a lot of people saying that was a load of old waffle. Well, to an extent, but actually everything in there you could apply to a conventional light rail system. You know, actually, MCS is really the correct term. And MCS is like the Nottingham trams, Sheffield tram, Super tram, all these things. They're all called MCS, medium capacity systems, because they're a bit more than an old tram, and they're a bit more than kind of light rail's a bit of a misnomer for what they are. They're more of a kind of a dedicated urban system. It's a step down from a proper metro, which is what Cambridge and the wider region needs. It needs a modern tram system, an MCS. And the idea that this system, which is just very, very expensive buses with, I mean, I've done a thread on CAM. It's junk. It's complete. It's a junk idea from top to bottom. You may well need a little bit of tunnelling here and there even for an MCS. Fine, do that. But to suggest that you need a £5 billion system, just to suggest that £5 billion is best spent on a bus on buses, and delaying any intervention. JP talked about traffic there repeatedly. Well, take the cars away then. it's just if you want to reduce traffic, the only way to reduce traffic and to reduce congestion is to reduce the number of vehicles on the road. Absolutely doolally. Absolutely doolally. Anyway, right, where are we? Let's have a look. So, oh yes. So the chat. So we've got let's have a look. So there's some challenges. Yeah, Alstora is pointing out that there's no space in the city centre to have separated cycleways and tramways. The streets are very narrow. Well, there are a couple of levels on that. Firstly, I disagree with that. You can always the challenge with compatibility of tramways and cycleways in Britain, where it's dangerous, Edinburgh is a good example of this, is because you have three modes intersecting. You've got buses and private vehicles and trams and bicycles. If you exclude everything but trams and bicycles, you can create safe intersecting cycleways and tramways. It's only when you introduce the third modes of traffic, so you introduce sort of other private vehicles or buses into that mixture, that it becomes unsafe. There's lots of evidence kind of showing that, and it's important to not. It's to, basically actually cycleways and tramways make quite good bedfellows, so long as you design the urban realm correctly. There are lots of places in Europe where it's just you have a compatibility of the two systems without a problem. It's an excuse to avoid the quickest, easiest, and kind of most cost-effective isn't the word I want to use. Most engineering effective, because we have a very, very short. If there's a shortage of heavy rail engineers, there is a massive shortage of light rail engineers in the UK, specialists who can design this sort of system. That's why we entirely outsource them. Pretty much all of them get entirely outsourced to mainland Europe. In any case, that was CAM, and that was the idea. And let's skip that video. And it comes to this sketch here. Euroblock 26 points out that it is autonomous in the sense that the public aren't being consulted. Yeah, very good point. Kentish Railways. Sorry, I know I was being facetious. You're right. The waffle comment is more that at no point do they give any facts or figures on what CAM will look like. Robin Weston agrees. So talking about mix of traffic, that kind of makes sense intuitively. Yeah, it does. At some point, I need to find some of these papers and disseminate them, because it is important. But, hashtag build trams. There was another query about MCS. Ned Carlson, isn't MCS more properly referring to light metro than things that don't need full grade separation? No, MCS, there's a bit of a mixture of definitions, but I'd say that MCS does cover, so Metrolink I would call an MCS. It does kind of cover that hybrid where you don't have full segregation and you have lower capacities. David Thompson asks why Runcorn's BRT system never caught on. I don't know, but I'm not a fan of BRT. In fact, I'm not a fan of the phrase BRT, bus rapid transit. It's just a bus system. It's just a better bus system, I don't think we should be afraid of just having better buses. I don't think we should have to give it a fancy name to be a proper bus system. Lots of people making the autonomous joke. Yeah, very very true. Green Steve is confused. Is asking, is this a bus tunnel like in Seattle or a tram? No, it's just a bus tunnel. It's just a very big bus tunnel. Yeah, they're battery buses. They'll run in tunnels in the centre of the city. It's as simple as that. Anyway, right, let's talk about what's on screen. So, on here is a sketch I made a very long time ago. Probably wasn't that long ago, like 3 years ago, describing the main problem with pretty much all of these gadget bans, which is two things, really. So on the one hand, three things, but there are two factors here that are things that... So people are always willing. So we've just talked about market demand, basically. So the bait and switch primarily is often about market demand. So talking about the fact that this city or this region needs an improvement in public transport. It needs there's congestion. It's bad. There's pollution. We want to reduce greenhouse gases. All the kind of sensible stuff. Market demand. Great. Yeah, that's fine. They talk about that, and then on the other hand, you've got people who are obsessively arguing about the abilities of the technology. So the fact that it's autonomous, using the word metro, saying it'll run without it's trackless, or I don't know, it's a vacuum system so that it can go super fast, or it'll reach 1,000 kilometers an hour, or I don't know, any of the nonsense that Loop tries to sell its junk on. They're obsessed with fighting about the technology, going on about, it can platoon, it can do this, it can do that. Utter nonsense. Meanwhile, this discussion, they go round and round and round and round. So the discussion between the market demand and the abilities of the technology, and that discussion can go on infinitely. It's like arguing with a pig in shit. There's no point trying to win because the pig's enjoying itself too much. And all of the time, all the while, missing out on... Well, I've only picked on one thing here, but there are other elements. But for me, always the main one is system capacity. They ignore the fact that, system capacity, but also things like, better systems already exist. Systems that are well established and have an existing kind of safety framework and regulatory framework exist already. And anything, not choosing to do those delays things for a very long time. So they always miss these kind of key questions. So system capacity is one of the main ones, by which I mean, how many people the system carries. Kind of a big deal when you're talking about public transport. Actually moving people around is important. So basically, the crux of this, and I think I'll press on it, I'll kind of press the point home again. Stop arguing with people about the technologies. Just don't even have that argument. go straight for the jugular and ask how many people it moves per hour per direction. And the market demand thing is something. So generally on the Twitter sphere, it's the technology discussions that are the ones that's happening. So this nonsense is happening on social media. Can I do the bird? There we are. Tweet. There it is. And the other bit here. That's Twitter. There we are. Brilliant. That's happening on social media, and this is happening in kind of the newspapers. There we are. This is me drawing a newspaper. And let's do it. There we are. Lovely. That's a red top. Newspapers are happening, and that's the discussion. Sort of the chattering classes are having the chats about market demand, and all the business people and sort of the venture capitalists talking about market demand as if the system can just magically accommodate all that demand, independent of the fact that it can't move anyone. So yes, Ella, Wacom tablet. I know. I like my dismal drawing. It brings character to the episode, right? In any case, this sketch is something to bear in mind, right? And it's not just Cambridge. So I've said that loads of things do this. This is an example of a Hyperloop system. They go on and on about this. There's like pages and pages of economic analysis and like trip analysis. And they've gone to this. They say, we did this amazing appraisal model. It's like, well, yeah, great, but that appraisal model just works for any form of public transport, because certainly in places like the US, for the most part, the existing public transport system is almost non-existent. Certainly when it's regional, or there is no high-speed rail in the United States at all. There's the northeast corridor is nippy, but it's fast in the sense that the Great Western Main Line is fast. It's not really a high-speed line. It's just it's just about scratching the surface. Although maybe in future there'll be an episode that'll correct me on that. That I might be recording tonight. We'll see. In any case, no spoilers to the Patreon people who are in the chat. No spoilers about what I might be alluding to. In any case, so who's Genofish? Genofish, what are you on about? In any case, right, so so you can have all the most fancy appraisal models in the world, but if your system does not actually move anyone per hour compared to existing, then your models are basically worthless, absolutely worthless. Right. The next one, we're going on to it's tech, not transit ploy. This is another absolutely typical one. So this kind of refers back to this sketch, really, the abilities of technology one. So, so I'm going to talk about one particular factor of this, so having discussed the tech, the abilities of technology and the market demand sort of. Those discussions going round and round in circles and ignoring the system capacity one. This is a slightly different angle, but this is the reason why some of these things become so visible to the public eye. Hyperloop is a thing that people know about. Why do they when it doesn't exist yet and will never exist properly? Like, why is it so etched into people's psyche? Well, the reason for that. Well, let me click a button here. Oh yeah, that's right. This will cheer up the if Loop guy is watching, the Boring Company fanboy is watching. This will really wind him up. Look at this. Do you remember this? This is oh wait, let me switch off my touchy paddy thing. There we are. So here we are. Look at this thing. This is the Loop. Well, except that it isn't. This is the early visualization of the Loop, of what it was sort of proposing it was going to be to all the suckers, including that. Including lots of people, actually. And most critically, the group that I'm going to be picking on here are tech journalists. Not all of them. There are a few worthy exceptions. Rory Kethlan-Jones is a key one. Kate Bevan, Alex Hearn. Who else can I name drop who are actually all over this stuff? There are a lot of tech journalists who are increasingly seeing through this stuff, actually. I'm seeing more posts that are seeing through the utter nonsense. But... there are a majority of, and goodness knows what the relationship of paid articles to genuine articles is as well with this stuff, because the deepest pockets that the organisation like the Boring Company have are their PR and press pockets. But for some reason, these things, they get picked up by tech journalists, not transport journalists. So the tech journalists are just looking at how snazzy this looks. Look at this. They're going, ooh, it's so snazzy. Look at this. They're going, oh look, but it goes 93 miles per hour, and there are all these tunnels, and they're not, they're not interrogating what that actually looks like. They're not going, how did it do that? How did it slot in? What signaling system what system have they got to enable that to work? And how, given that a load of people just jumped into it, what happens to all the ones waiting behind it for it to find a slot? And how long is the acceleration tunnel to actually? No one's asking that question. They're just going, ooh, fancy tubes and pods. They are, so they look very happy in their glass box. Very nice. Don't know what these things are. I mean, I'll be a bit worried about how flat this tyre is, but let's not worry too much about that. 123 miles an hour, amazing. Doesn't it look snazzy? And all the lights flashing over the top, and it says the terminal on the front. Look at all these tunnels going everywhere. It's marvellous. It's magical. Look at all these magical tunnels. This is the future I want. In any case, as you might imagine, the reality becomes very different. And so, Loop is now just taxis in a tunnel. It's literally nothing more. It's just taxis, just regular taxis in a tunnel. And somehow it's been called public transport. And anyone who knew anything about this stuff, including some of the more savvy or cynical tech journalists, but by and large sort of transport people, as soon as the suggestion was mooted, we went, just be a lane of traffic buried underground. It's rubbish. And of course that's what it's turned into. But the tech journalists make such a huge fuss about it because they don't have... So because it falls into the world of tech and not transport and not sort of wider, maybe fall into the wider remit of other journalists, it's getting interrogated as fancy, snazzy tech. And so the technology journalists are not necessarily equipped with the right understanding of how transport works, transportation systems. So they're... basically, it means that it manages to find... You get a lot of... I mean, in fact, let's have a look at... This is just me doing a quick search. I searched Hyperloop article, and you look at all these articles. So I just searched Hyperloop article, and all these articles. So ZDNet, The Guardian Tech, CNN Tech, what's that? Sort of like Wired. All these things that are technology magazines, technology websites, not transportation technology, transportation websites. Serious problem. So while I've got that silly picture up. Let's have a look at the chat, shall we? Fairly relaxed chat. Yes, exactly. Yeah, David Shearers is saying, so right about technology. That's important, though it is important to understand that all guided transport is a system. Yeah, the technology thing really is it's the obsession with the hypertech, the tech element, rather than the whole consideration of it as a system. And so mundane questions like how many people does it carry rely on looking at the whole system rather than at, the fact that it's autonomous, it has driverless car technology in it, or it's autonomous, or it's whatever gimmick that they've come up with. It's in a fancy vacuum tube, all this junk. Let's see. Michael C asks, is it fair to say that the only thing Hyperloop is good for is replacing plane flights on journeys that are too long for HSR or some sort of intercontinental travel? No, Michael, because the capacity is so low that for probably substantially lower cost and arguably a reduced greenhouse gas emission, GHG emissions, just transport everyone in private jets. Be a lot more straightforward, a lot cheaper, a lot safe. Well, a lot more easily deployable. For example, there's not enough steel in the world to build a Hyperloop tube between the UK and New York. It's just the idea that you can have fixed infrastructure connecting those two cities is barking mad. So no, I'm afraid there is no solution where it makes sense. I was asked this on I'll plug this again later. I was asked this on Tech 10. It's like, but are there places where Hyperloop could be a good idea? Like Abu Dhabi to Dubai. It's like, no, private jet is probably less damaging to the environment. So, what other questions have we got? Let's have a look. Ella, the developer, is being appreciating that British Rail's IC125 is faster on a good day. Yep, it's true. Although the 802 is even faster. Lol. I'm wagging my glasses while I say that. Eurobloke26, have you seen the issues about the electric car blog Electrek? No, I haven't. You have to tell me all about it. Let's have a look. Yes, Matt Reed, been asked what time you're planning on finishing tonight. Well, I'm aiming to finish not too far off time. How are we doing? 43 minutes in. So I'm hoping to finish this on the hour. We'll see. Well, how much maintenance will Hyperloop need? Goodness knows. But those pumps to me look like a absolute maintenance liability, and you'll need loads of them. And also, you'll need to have section seals, a bit like track circuits. You need to have section seals right the way through. So, maintenance-wise, it's just going to be a huge, huge liability. Anyway, right. So, and yeah, this is the trajectory. This is the standard trajectory of this junk, and this was actually from Cam. So here you've got actual mass transit, and then you're converting it to a bus with a small tunnel around it. So that's pretty much the standard trajectory for the stuff. I pointed out in my article that Loop has taken this precise trajectory. It's converted. It says steps to mass transit cost reduction. It's like, well, yeah, you do reduce the cost of mass transit if you make it not mass transit anymore. Anyway, as I said, yeah, having journalists who are able to interrogate that and also disseminate suitably rigorous rebuttals based, again, not around the technology, but around the transport system is very rare. It's difficult to spot that stuff. Right, this is the next one, and we're going to feature some bionic duckweed in here for the benefit of Roger Ford. Although, Roger, pay attention to people who are telling you about... Listen to people who are telling you about things to do with gender and using inclusive language, please. Everyone needs to do better on that, but Roger, you're getting yourself into hot water on that. Just listen to the younger generation. Come on now. Anyway, number 4, the "What if we're wrong" ploy featuring bionic duckweed. Well, this is a common one, and it's one of the reasons why you often see. Ella, no, I don't use Edge. I use Edge when I'm capturing video of browsers because it's kind of a bit of a funny thing to do. I got you. I'm a Chrome user, which, to be fair, is as funny because Chrome is the RAM hogger general. Anyway, the "What if we're wrong" ploy. What do I mean by that? Let's skip to this. Noel Dolphin, who is a Patreon supporter, actually. Thanks, Noel. Thumbs up. Made this pretty funny series of comic strips about... basically, it was a transport select committee session talking about decarbonisation. And he made these 2 comics, which are comic strips, which is of... To be fair, I'm being a little bit mean to the chair here, because... to an extent, he was playing devil's advocate. However, you still... the devil's advocate is fine, but it gets picked up... You need to be more conscious of this, because it gets picked up by the... don't play devil's advocate by asking stupid questions, basically. The 2 questions that our boy here... What's his name? Hugh Merriman, isn't it? 2 questions that Hugh's asking. Hugh, actually. Is he... Well, Hugh? Yeah. The 2 questions Hugh is asking. One is, but isn't there too much focus on electrification? And then the next one is, do we put all work into electrification when new tech is around the corner? These are the 2 reasons why gadget bans manage to find their way into the eyes, ears, mouths, wherever it happens to be, of the political class. And it's because they hate committing to the right, easy solution that's right in front of them, because they fear that a better, easier solution will arrive tomorrow that no one's told them about. And it's an eternal challenge, a really eternal challenge. Yeah, so it's just like this, and this is something in the case of electrification is a battle we've been fighting for a very long time. So the first national report on electrification actually was out in like the late 1910s, I think. But possibly, we've had basically every decade we've had a new national challenge by the industry about why it's a good idea to do electrification. That was 1981, which you remember from the APT episode. We talked about this one, and again I referred to it in the TDNS, I think, as well. The Traction Decarbonisation Network Strategy, which is what came out this year, 2020, which is by far the most detailed work that anyone in the world has ever done on justifying the national need for electrification. And I was in a conference. I was speaking at a conference in Colombia, actually, where I recommended that they go and download this document because it's a document that lots of parts of the world should be using and referencing. So fantastic bit of work there. Despite all this effort, and the suggestion that it's always all about electrification. Well, it isn't. It is not. This is a graph from Project Fizzy Knitting. Thanks, Gary, for letting me borrow this one. I think he put it on Twitter anyway, so it's all right. I don't think I'm stealing anything. And everyone's sort of seen this graph anyway, right? So this is the graph showing how many single track kilometres. So that's if you've got 1 kilometre of double track, that's 2 single track kilometres. How many single track kilometres of electrification have happened every year? So you can see a little bit in the the mid 1910s. Big surge of third rail electrification happening on the southern between 25 and 39. Obviously, the war kiboshed that somewhat. And then you've got modernisation, where you've got the West Coast Main Line being electrified. You've got Glasgow Suburban. You've got the extension up to Glasgow of the West Coast Main Line electrification in the early 70s. So there's a bit of a gap between 69 and 71. But then a reasonable flow, and then a drop again in the late 70s, early 80s. Battling its way through the Thatcher government to find its way to East Coast Main electrification, and then a huge drop, a vacuum in that sort of work, and then actually what looks comparatively small in terms of the number of kilometres being electrified. But that was it was such less than ever we'd electrified before in terms of peak years, but the industry was so ill prepared for it that it stumped us really. But not on all projects, but on 2, on Great Western and on Northwestern electrification. Big bad plans. But because of this idea that there's something that we might have around the corner, the slightest kind of the wind blows ever so slightly and politicians run for the hills and cancel everything in sight. It's an absolutely dismal situation. And it's true for gadget bans. So it's true for the idea of just building metro systems. One of the reasons you look at the former transport minister, the former Secretary of State for Transport, Chris Grayling, came out with the barbaric statement that it's not the job of the Department for Transport to drive modal share. Thankfully, his predecessor has overwritten that and said that and did a position paper about modal share, despite the fact that words more than actions, none of his actions have done anything about modal share. But Chris Grayling embodies that idea that it's not the business of government to try and instigate change. And he ddid say in the same quote, Lillian Greenwood can back me up on this one. I think she tweeted about it at the time, and in fact she was chairing at the time, so she was quizzing him. And she pointed out, and he said that autonomous vehicles will change the way people travel. No, they won't. Driverless cars will not change the way people travel. Driverless cars are just cars. Anyway, that's the next section. So anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, I'm sighing, probably loud, long, dismal sighs at all this stuff. So the political will often comes from the fear of what's next, and so that's another bubble that you have to burst. You have to argue that case, and just sort of almost holding a mirror up to politicians to point out their fallibility on that front is not a bad idea. And indeed, for the case of electrification, the work has been done. The TDNS has shown that the only wide-scale solution to decarbonisation is electrification. These are the single-track kilometres that the TDNS spat out. I don't know if David Shearers was on this one last time, but this graph basically sums up the TDNS in one tweet. So you've got, of 15,400 single-track kilometres, only 13,000 single-track kilometres can be resolved with hydrogen, which makes sense because they're some of the longer rural fringe lines. Only 800 single-track kilometres can be resolved with battery power, so those are really just little infill bits and pieces. And the lion's share, 13,000 of those 15,400 single-track kilometres, just require full-blown conventional electrification. Anyway, there we are. So often in the case with these things, you have to really push on the evidence, and it's presenting the evidence to politicians, so they run out of corners to hide in and shout. But what about the future? It's doing the analysis. Unfortunately, that can sometimes be time-consuming. But industry should not wait for government to tell it to do that analysis. It's so frustrating that the TDNS was enacted by government, but essentially Network Rail was told to create it. Network Rail should have created the TDNS back in 2007. It really should have created it when it was initialised after taking over from Railtrack. But anyway, and the last ploy, the AM versus FM ploy, which we're going to talk about driverless cars again. So. I'm not going to look at the questions quite yet because I'm going to try and keep on top of time. It's 1953. Okay, well let's see, shall we? Let's see. The AM versus FM ploy. Now AM is actual machines, and FM is fucking magic. That's basically, those are technical terms. So I don't feel bad for using the language. They're technical terms to describe different systems. And let's have a look at some pictures, shall we? So here's a picture. Do you know what this is? I think this is called retrofuturism, but these are the sort of graphics that have been drawn in the 1950s, right? So the 1950s, people were drawing all sorts of graphics about what the future was going to look like. So let's. There's lots of chat going on. I'll come back to that later. So here, this is the 1950s, a little sketch of what's going on in the future, and let's have what else do we have? I've never listened to music for this. Oh god, the music's really bad. It's quite loud as well, I'd imagine. Is it loud? Sorry if it's really loud. I need a censor beat. Nah, I don't mind swearing. The most offensive things people say are generally don't involve swear words. The F word is literally my favourite language, my favourite word in the English language. It's absolutely stunningly versatile and beautiful word. Anyway, look at this. It's exactly the same nonsense. It's just the same nonsense. Let's have another look at this picture. So here's another picture of some retrofuturism going on here. Yeah, they're playing dominoes inside a car that seems to be driving along without them driving it. Oh, look, and it's another modern visualization of precisely the same horrifying dystopia. You noticing a pattern here? Let's try another one. Oh, what's this? Okay, this is seems to be like a pod-based thing on stilts, going above tracks. It looks very sort of Wile E. Coyote here. That's very sort of Looney Tunes, isn't it? Oh, look, and it's precisely the same thing in a modern visualization. These are all the same thing. All of these are the same thing. It's all just people's ability to draw their wildest dreams. And it just so happens to be that those wildest dreams, when you actually unpick them from an engineering or a socioeconomic perspective, are a horrifying dystopia. And that's certainly true for the driverless cars nonsense. Like, we're just talking about more cars, everyone. It's just more cars. That's all. It just means more cars. It's no more complicated than this. So anyway, yeah. So it could be. Detour is pointing out the frequency of usage of the F word in Ireland compared to the US. Yeah, I know, right? And in any case, yeah, David Shearers is desperately trying to work out, why do we need to spend this time and energy? Why do we need to spend time and nervous energy on Hyperloop when its ultimate failure is inevitable? It's not even a thing that will be. It won't even exist to fail. This is the joke. It'll downgrade itself to the point where it's just a roller coaster between Abu Dhabi and Dubai for a few rich people to take, and they'll hail it as a success. It's just like Loop. It's exactly the same thing. Jared Johnson, all that oil for the concrete, very green. Yeah, well, indeed. And we have to continue to green up concrete. Creating the. Anyway, yeah, we can. At some point, I'm going to get one of my colleagues on to talk about cement, actually, and how we can make it more environmentally friendly. We already had Prab on talking about that sort of subject. So need to get another one of my colleagues on to talk about it. She literally has a PhD in cement. So what can I say? In any case, the reason I showed you these pictures is because it's this idea of AM versus FM. You can draw the most stunning visualization. Look at this thing. It looks very snazzy. I mean, it looks like a city skyline screenshot. Frankly, there's a distinct lack of any obvious real city in there. It's just lots of Anyway, the point being, it looks wonderful because it doesn't exist in reality. It exists in a 3D fancy 3D model. It exists in the mind of the Photoshop, the artist who's created it. And it's as true for when they start creating their business models. They can come up with the most fanciful suggestions about construction costs because it's never been done before, because it doesn't exist in reality. So all their costings can be as marvelous and fanciful and painted as far cheaper than the alternatives, when actually the reality is that construction is messy and complicated and tricky and fiddly, and things go wrong, and business cases fall to bits because business cases are often hashed together by people who have no idea what they're talking about anyway. And indeed, are generally, even if the people do know what they're talking about, they're built. The business cases are built on systems that were never hoped to capture the benefits of national infrastructure or indeed regional or local infrastructure. The reality is that engineering, transport, moving people and things around is complicated, fiddly, imperfect, messy, and so all that all that glory and tidiness. You never see a Hyperloop visualization where they're actually building the damn thing, do you? In any case, the reality is that transport is messy. It's impossibly busy and messy. It's nightmarishly frustrating to kind of go around in the circles with this. And so it's the idea that politicians as well buy into this wonderful, glorious looking FM world, when actually the reality is AM. The reality is unavoidably AM. And so what is the problem then? What's the problem? Well, I've given you all these 5 ploys, which I should have relisted again. What were they? Can we whiz back through these at high speed? Yeah, go on. Let's see. So we had number 1. It's the future ploy. We had the number 2, the bait and switch ploy. We had number 3, the it's tech not transit ploy, and the 4, what if we're wrong ploy. Number 5, I should have had the Top of the Pops music playing. Number 5 is the AM versus FM ploy. I should have also done an epilepsy warning, given how many bright things have just flashed up on screen. My sincere apologies if anyone's photosensitive. Probably a bit late now, actually. So all those ploys. What's the problem? So what? Even if a little bit of public money gets spent on these things, it's research, right? So it's good. It's employing people. It's positive. The trouble is, if you pursue. Meanwhile, the world gets this. This is the problem with gadget bans, is that in reality, people get this. They get pacers. They get junk trains. They get rubbish services. They get 2-hourly services. They get a bus service that gets cancelled. They get told to book taxis. They have railway stations that are inaccessible. They have, colossal, massive failures in timetable that result in them having to lose their job. They get strike action. They get all these things that are the result of poor management of existing systems that we have now that work. This is basically the consequence. So I just have to say that fundamentally, the reason you have to fight gadget bans is because otherwise you get pacers, which in and of itself, a pacer is a bit of a gadget ban, but that's for a future episode. Oh, basically the result, and I've whizzed through that. I have absolutely hammered through that. You must call out gadget bans wherever and whenever you see them. Absolutely critical. And when you do it, don't just do it for, don't just do it on Twitter. So in my case, the power I have is that I write and it gets picked up by, the local newspaper in Cambridge one of the local newspapers picked up my fighting about Cam, and to the point where I ended up meeting Mayor James Palmer, who got incredibly red and sweaty when I pointed out that the whole thing was a scam. He became hugely defensive in a very hilarious way and started getting very legalistic. So that's definitely reassures you about how clean the whole thing is. In any case, I'm sure that's short of libel. That's probably fine, right? As I said, I've merely made humorous implications. My lawyer says that's fine. In any case, you just got to call it out. So for my case, writing for yourselves, it's writing to your MP. It's getting involved in local transport, in local transport planning stuff, planning applications, emailing councillors, emailing MPs, emailing your elected representatives. Getting involved as much as you can, and contacting your elected representatives is like the main way that normals like ourselves can get involved. I mean, tweeting people is not a bad start to build momentum occasionally, but the reality is, in most cases, you need to be writing to your elected officials. Point this stuff out. Absolutely point this stuff out. Have a drink. Oh, I needed that. So, given that I've got this up, and given that it's, what is it? Okay, I'm a little bit late. But I'm doing all right, because we're nearly, I think that's the last slide. So I'm going to go back through and have a look at the chat now here. So, Eurostar Lover 009 says, I like how they think they could use solar panels to power the whole system. Yeah, that's a point that Bebop made in his presentation, that it's all powered by solar panels. I'm pretty sure a back of cigarette packet calculation could show you the surface area you need is far greater than the length of the system. Not to mention junk. What else have we got here? Why don't people selling traditional rail just tell the same ridiculous lies, but at the end we have usable infrastructure? Josh, that's a very good point. The trouble is, we're bound by the reality that we've created ourselves. We're bound by this AM reality. Because we're anchored and bound by it, we can't, because we get called out as charlatans. Rightly so. And indeed, as you've seen with High Speed 2, whenever people start using some of the same language that you associate with these things, they get called out for it because, for all sorts of complicated reasons that I'm sure we could get into, but I'm not going to now. But actually, when it does happen, they get called out for it. They get called wasteful. You get called, the Tax Dodgers Alliance get involved, and all this stuff. All that stuff. Mike Whitcomb. Would the Wuppertal suspended line come under this category, in your opinion, for example? Yes. Wuppertal's an interesting one because it is a gadget ban. But, it does have it's one of those ones that sort of does have its own limited application. You could suggest that it might have been easier for them to just have a kind of, in the structure they built, they could have just put an elevated tram line, a bit like the L in the various L systems in North America. They could have just done that, and it would have been easier to roll out, easier to replace rolling stock, and that's why it's still a gadget ban. But it doesn't necessarily totally write it off as a folly. It's not an unreasonable question. What else have we got here? So I think that's all the chat. I'm not seeing many red things. Lovely. Very nice. Schwebeban works well, says Titchy Tiger 123. Yeah, fair point. There are lots of things that what's this? Yeah, I think we've been all right in the Slancher, Gordon. Yeah, nice one, Slancher. I think we've been. The chat hasn't been too inundated by the Musk fans because our poor Musk fan who did a thread earlier, but I have him muted, so I only noticed because people were responding to the tweets that I was added into. Bless. In any case, what a shame. So it doesn't seem to have surfaced. Never mind. In any case, that was the episode. I don't know how good that was in audio only mode, but as ever, these are available in all good podcasting for all good podcasting sources. David Shearers is pointing out that we shouldn't write off all novel transport. The thing is, even the Heathrow pods they're a gadget ban. It's poddy. It's personal rapid transit. They have their minimal uses, but it can be a gadget ban, but still function. I think that's I think it's quite clear when there are better alternatives that could be utilised, and that's when when a gadget ban becomes criminal. I found out from our very esteemed former guest John Stone pointed out that I've finally broken the audio format. It turns out that my scenic rail tours of around an hour in length don't work very well in audio only format, and for all the podcast listeners who listen to that and were just sighing in disbelief and anger and throwing their phone across the room and just generally being very upset and spitting their earpods out of their, I don't know, what do people do with their AirPods? I don't know. I don't know. With their poddy earphones. I've gone off on one about earphones. Why? In any case, they're all very upset. I can only apologise. Anyway, hopefully this one is better. And the standard closing stuff. Go on the Discord for all the nonsense. GarethDennis.co.uk/Discord. If you want to chuck me pennies, PayPal.me is very good for that. PayPal.me/GarethDennis. And the Patreon is where you get to find out about what episode I'm recording tonight with a very special guest. It's where you get to find out, it's where you get to input into, for example, this episode. So I was having a nice chat about, that's a fairly rapid chat because today was absolutely nightmarish from a work perspective. But yeah, we chat about all good things related to the episodes. And I asked lots of, you have input, and also as patrons, you do get the chance to appear as guests as well. So all that good stuff. Lots of sneak peeks in there, I hope. And I'll be putting more on the actual Patreon website as well. I think I put all the... So patrons, for example, all the patrons know every single episode now between now and next year. So that's very exciting. Yeah, so that's very good. Oh, okay. Some ads, some plugs. First plug. I think I mentioned this last week. I was on BBC World Service Tech Tent with Rory Catalan-Jones talking about Hyperloop. So if you want to listen to Hyperloop, have a listen to that. It's quite funny comparing that episode, the episode from a couple of weeks ago, with my first appearance on Tech Tent, which was my first BBC appearance actually, 3 years ago, where I was much more measured and wanting everyone to be happy in my responses, whereas although hopefully still fairly on the nose, but this time I was a little more blunt, shall we say. Also, I was in a fantastic little episode of People Fixing the World with Richard Kenny. It's another BBC World Service podcast, actually. Really, really good. And it's all about solar trains. And you might go, oh, boo, which is exactly what I did when I first heard about it. But actually, have a listen to the episode. I basically pop up throughout the episode as the voice of reason, for better or worse. And hopefully it comes to the end and you get a nice, there's a kind of a nice... yeah, it's a really good episode actually. Richard Kenny was a fantastic host and really interested in the source material and interested in representing the subject matter correctly, which was really great actually. What else have we got? Oh yes. Next week, Lindsay Broadwell is joining us to talk about e-bikes, possibly also to mention trolley buses and nuclear power, but mostly e-bikes for episode 38. So that'll be good. Yeah, we'll have an elected official on the podcast, on the show. That'll be fun, won't it? Yeah, that'll be good. Right, so we have some James P. Copy paste of John Christoph's question. How do you respond to the argument that maximising capacity is unnecessary because project location lacks a population to justify Thameslink-like throughput? Well, my answer is if you go for a system that has the ability to eventually deliver that, you can cater for growth. But also, given that the railway can achieve Thameslink-like capacity, and also can achieve, when you've got a much lower throughput on that system, it does. This is where you have a scaling system. Nodes before modes is my point. I'm not saying that you should have a huge complicated system for an area where you don't need it, but you need to look at nodes. You need to look at the market you're delivering, the market you're delivering for, the population, the expected population, and match a system to that. So I'm not suggesting that you should have high speed 2 connecting. Connecting. I don't know what's a good example. Connecting Inverness and Aberdeen. It doesn't make any sense to have a high-speed line connecting Inverness and Aberdeen. However, it does make sense to upgrade the line to dual track right the way through and have a much more frequent service. So there are lots of things like that. There are people asking me techie questions about Hyperloop. Don't do that, as I've just said not to do that. It's not. Don't worry about the tech. It's irrelevant. We need to talk about the system and the wider questions about capacity. For Hyperloop. So yes, Matt Reed asked if the UK has any trolley buses. No, I don't think we do have any trolley buses, do we? We ought to. Trolley buses are brilliant. In any case, right, I've gone off on one. Plenty enough about that. Where are we? Sarah's going woo about Lindsay. Yeah, Sarah, your time is coming. You better believe it. You're going to be coming on here to talk about all things Leeds. It's going to happen. Anyway, right. Let's see. We can't put them in, and we can't hear the people over the sound of our AirPods Pro. In any case, right. It's quite enough of that. All it matters is for me to sort of bang my table, take my last sip of beer, and say, yeah, stop HS2R all for Hyperloop. There they are. It's to say thanks so much for joining me for this episode. It's run on a little bit longer, but hopefully not too long. Thanks to all my Patreon supporters. You're all brilliant and marvellous. Thanks to everyone who runs the admin team who run the Discord. And hopefully this was an interesting episode. I will see you all next week. I am going to now go and collapse because I've got another episode to record tonight. Hooray! All I'm going to do is just bring this in here and then take it out without saying anything, so the people in audio have no idea what that was, but that's fine. In any case, once my camera focuses it, I'm just going to basically say cheerio, really. Cheerio, you've all been lovely, it's been a pleasure. Cheerio!